Welcome to Tales from the Golden Imp. I am Joe Craig, the Impish Skald. In this episode, we will learn the fate of Jaina Krist, the results of the meeting of the Council of Eldos, and the destination that these ships from Devalton that were seen in White Harbor. We will also see if Dandros can reignite the flames of his faith. Let us find out in this episode of the Calmbringer Cycle. Welcome to Tales from the Golden Imp. Episode 14, Devalton Comes Calling. We have talked long enough, and that comes from an elf. We must take action. The threat, especially with the news that Devalton ships have been seen in the flow. This is something beyond just your little city, Lord Burduli. This is a threat to all of us. This was said by Lord Ethan Eldos as he stood in the council chamber for the Council of Eldos. Standing at 6'3", Lord Ethan Eldos was a tall elf. His blonde hair was straight and landed on his shoulders. He was wearing the green and gold robes of his god Holofaust. No, but you look to the city of Durg. Be this backbone of this military. This saves a lot of you. This is simply an unfair assessment and use of the resources of Durg. Durg's military has been kept to keep Durg safe. I'm sure you, Lord Vyden, have a military force that you keep around for the sake of the people of the Great Falls Forest. You say reforms the military. I say the humans need to build an army. What say you, Olan? Where do you fall on this? You've been brought as a voice of reason. Let us hear this reason, Burduli said with a huff. Burduli was looking to the only other dwarf in the room to validate his claims. With a slow sigh, Olan rose. Olan was shorter than Burduli, standing only a couple inches taller than the halfling Lady Virgil. His red beard was braided neatly, and he looked the part of the Lord himself, with the clothing that his wife has prepared for him. Olan approached the table across from Burduli, under his breath saying, "I'm not meant for this," before raising his voice for all to hear. "You want my counsel? My people have been fighting for the territory for hundreds of years with the goblins of the Dragontooth Mountains and the dead that fall around our city. You don't know the horrors that my people have faced just to survive with an additional threat. I am no great lord, but I lead my people, and I've led them into battle with this threat time and time again. Over the past generations, our hatred for our neighbors, leaving us to our plight, has receded to the point of simply ignoring them. I fear that much is true for the people of Malaton. There was an event that poisoned our cups, and we drank deeply of that poison. Now is not the time for a poison between brothers. My people trust me, and I have to have their interest at heart. I am here for that purpose. I am here also by the request of Lord Ethan Eldos. Something that a year ago I would have told him to kick Crox and say that I would not be his plaything at such a meeting. The recent events have changed that, and that has changed me. The threat that we have faced and fought together was more than our city's combined forces could deal with. I've not seen goblins in these numbers in my lifetime. I fought goblins and dealt with raids. These attacks were not like those. Goblins eat meat as their preferred diet. Have they taken beasts of burden before? Yes. They have. Do they steal tools instead of make them? Of course they do. Well, they eat grain. Only if they're starving, and if you hadn't noticed, winter isn't even here yet. How many people do you think the goblins have abducted over the past 43 years? Take a guess, Jarl Burduli. I don't know. A few hundred over that time? Burduli now regretting his decision to call Olan to talk. No, Jarl. prior to the attack, a little over a week ago now. That number was 3. And those were specific events that had specific needs. They took an apothecary when they had a sick leader that their medicines would not heal. They took a goblin that we had taken into our fold after being exiled from the tribe, and they wanted to execute the lass. Lastly, they abducted a child to get a goblin back. When one of mine was foolish, but kind people found one in the passes, just lost just before dark. They took the child in to keep it alive. And well, the goblins took the child to trade for theirs. All 3 were specific events with specific needs. Never had they attacked us like they did and steal the things that they did. This time, like Ethan said, they took people, including our chief blacksmith. They took beasts of burden and carts. They took our grain, from which they did not feed our people with. That grain is still gone and was not recovered. We will need aid from the plains to keep our people fed this winter at the rate if it's not recovered. Build an army with what we have? We barely have a population enough to do the jobs that are needed in our cities for the Dragontooth Mountains. Do I expect you to come down off your throne and get your hands dirty, Burduli? No, I wouldn't want to risk your skills for such actions. But I do get my hands dirty with my people. My opinion is, there is more at play here than just a goblin threat. These ships that Lady Virgil was talking about is part of that play. My opinion is we have to mobilize what forces we can and get them to Durg, Port Skara, and Kievestown. The great forge of Beldon cannot fall to the enemy. That is my opinion, Master Dwarf. He spat the final words of his impromptu speech. And behind her goblet, Alysha Mandrift of the Dragon Eye Lake nodded. Her words were true. If he were to give a poison, he would give it to you straight. Fine. Let us get this vote over with. I'm clearly in the minority here, so Durg will have to save your little cities at the cost of Durg's securities. Burduli said quietly, but his eyes shone with a fury. Hold on a moment, Jarl Burduli. There is more than a simple vote that is needed here. We must decide on what we are intending to do before we can vote. The first vote on the table is reforming the military. Beyond that, we have much work that is needed. As chair of this council, I await for a formal declaration for a vote. A motion must be presented for us to vote upon. Lord Elvantri Kethos said while getting his white hair back in place from his half-elven head. It was slicked back with a wicked widow's peak. He not too much darker in complexion than the Darkwood elf present at the meeting. Those words spoken, Josef Mitchcoff, the said Darkwood elf, then rose. I, Lord Mitchcoff from the Darkwood Forest, so make a motion to reform the military of Edius, following the precepts dictated to us by the last king of Edius. Each region will form and support a military that is a 20th of the population of the region. I do so move to state that we should centralize this army around the city of Durg. That seems to be the central threat. The motion was made and seconded by Lord Ethan Eldos. Discussion was had to the central point of the army for the present and the future. The terms of service were discussed and details where the funding would come from. But at the end, the motion was made and passed with a vote of 9-1. Jarl Burduli being the only vote of dissent. The debates now began on what exactly that meant for the people of Edius. How would it change their lives? They also discussed what exactly to tell the people to not alarm them too much. These debates took them the next few days as plans were set out. On the second day of the debates, Jarl Turfrid Burduli had enough and excused himself and returned to his home. He did so with the weight of the council upon his shoulders, expecting much from him. And also, Greendare had fated to Dimma. Regos was up early. He had much to do in case Jaina didn't wake this morning. And they needed to move her. They had the litter for her and a beast of burden in the form of Holly. He left that rain frog with Jaina as well. It seemed to be guarding her. He hated to admit it, but he was growing attached. In fact, it was almost as if he knew exactly where the little meatball was. Regos was smoking his pipe while traveling to fetch the donkey from the Seaward Snail and gather some food to hold them over. But they would be in Durg by midday. As Regos approached the snail, he noted just how much fog there was in the river. It was thick, so thick you couldn't see anything through it. He collected the donkey and their provisions and headed back to the Pauldron of Halis. He said his goodbyes to the captain and crew of the Seaward Snail. They were setting off just after he left. As he climbed the hill, leaving the harbor district, horns began to sound. Thinking back to the wall of fog in the ice floe canal, it was moving against the wind. Regos spun in time to see the first ship emerge from the fog. From the bow of the ship, the person there spread his hands in a pattern that was almost legendary. The wizard produced a ball of flame between his hands that they launched to one of the militant ships in the bay, setting it ablaze with a massive explosion. Regos nearly dropped his pipe. They were too late. The flags of Devalton was flying aboard the ship. What's worse, it was not alone. Ship after ship cut through the fog and into the harbor itself. Shipping vessels, fishing boats, and the like were struck down with fireballs. Regos' eyes scanned the snail. She was sneaking her way out of the harbor, sails filled with wind that was driving the ships into the harbor. Horns still sounding as the guards of the city began to form ranks and move towards the docks. A catapult was set on each side of the harbor. But would they fire in time? Had they been fired in years? Regos certainly didn't know, but he knew one thing. They had to go. Durg's military needed to mobilize and get here now. Getting back to the Pauldron of Halis, Priest Crox was waiting. What's going on? Those are war horns. Is there an invasion? Regos not slowing down until he knew Meg was in earshot. Oh yes, there's an invasion. Devalton has come knocking. There are ships on fire in the harbor and warriors lined up to make landfall. Your services will be needed soon, priest. Are there war priests here, or is it just you? Crox, feeling a little flustered, reached for his sword and shield. The others are on patrol. We heard of a threat, and they were checking that out. They won't be back for another day. I'll defend your friend here. Don't worry about that. Regos turned on the halfling. I'm not worried about her right now. I'm worried about the people of the city. The target isn't here. This is just a speed bump for the forces that gathered. They intend on driving through the city of Durg. Durg needs to be alerted. That's what we're here trying to do. I just didn't know about the ships. We need to evacuate the city and close the gates to the city of Durg. The siege will begin then. Make it happen. Meg, darling, get her attached to Holly while I load Holly up with what we can't pack. Durg is in trouble. People probably don't remember what those horns mean. I know because we're trained on them. This will be a massacre if what you say is true. Priest Crox stilling himself for what was to come. I have an idea, but you got to get your friend out of here. She's no help of ours in her condition and won't likely wait for another day. The whole time that Regos was speaking, he was loading their things up upon Holly. Speed was of the essence now. He had seen fireballs thrown, so they were dealing with wizards that were far more powerful than he right now. Going through the options in his mind, he was growing more and more concerned for the people of Port Skara. He also knew that if left to their own devices and survival instincts, the people would panic. Making sure a voice they trusted was guiding them was imperative to the survival of the city as a whole. What are you still doing here, Crox? The people need you. Get them out of here safely if you can. May Halis guide you, Crox. And may Halis guide and protect you, Regos. Priest Crox said as he disappeared into the city. His voice could be heard as he was calling for people of the city to come to him. One voice in the mix of the horns and the sounds of war. How much could that one voice do? Regos pondered this while affixing Jaina's armor to the donkey. One thing was certain, this was going to make their conversation about the threat to Durg much more convincing. Why, oh why, did he have to wish that they had more evidence? As the pair secured Jaina's litter to Holly, they looked to one another. Regos spoke first. The people need help if they are to survive. They have wizards out there that are powerful enough to cast moderate spells. If they have one more powerful, this town will be decimated. Crox needs help. He can't do it alone. And that's why you're going to guide Holly while I do what I can to help these people. You are a stranger to the battlefield still. I was born to this. I've seen these scenes before. We will not save everyone, but we can save more lives than Durg. This city is lost already. We need to help the people retreat and fall back to Durg and get those city doors shut. You get to Durg, I will catch up. Meg interrupted. There's no time to argue. Take your damned frog and go now, Regos. Regos couldn't argue with her, but he wanted to. He wanted to step up and be the hero. But his magic was far too weak to turn these tides. A powerful mage, a single one could turn these tables. But he wasn't one yet. Running the options over in his head, he knew Meg was right. She can handle a battlefield far better than he. Well, be safe and be deadly. May Halis preserve us. Meg patted Regos on the cheek before heading out. On the way, she said, May Crix, the unending sun, forge me yet again. As she reached to the steps of the temple, the first longships were hitting the docks. Troops were spilling out, and that first ship was loaded with a fearsome sight: dragoons. The elite warriors of Devolton's military. A few brave guards were at the docks forming a line. The massacre was quick, efficient, and final. The dragoons broke that line, leaving not a single survivor. With the capacity of a longship and the size of the armor that these dragoons wore, she guessed around 70 of these elite warriors. They formed a spear-tip formation and pushed into the city. Each ship looked to carry with them at least a pair of wizards. The screams of townfolk could be heard. The spear held formation, and it was driving straight through the heart of the city. And they had an objective. So long as the people of Skara kept from their path, they would survive. But likely be under the foot of these monsters. Once that tunnel was closed to Durg, that's where the massacre would begin in earnest. The people trying to flee the city, slamming upon those massive stone doors as the spear struck them like a hammer striking an anvil. Some of the base soldiers were clearing out of the docks now. There were still ships coming from the fog, counting in groups of 5. She gave the estimate of the size of the force that was on the way. The longships, she counted around 25, and then there were galleons that were starting to show in the fog. The fog was dissipating now to reveal the size of the fleet of ships that they were. This was an invading army, not just a strike force. The hammer was coming and Durg was the nail. The only thing on their side was the docks here are too shallow for the galleons to dock. They would have to anchor out and use smaller boats to transport. But those were here for the siege to come, not for the Battle of Port Skara. Beyond the spear tip, the other forces of Devolton were now spilling out around the edges. Spreading the area of control, they were moving fast towards an objective. A small group of soldiers were heading to key locations in the city, and one was heading directly towards the Temple District. The main spear was heading towards the gates of Durg, that much was clear, but it was a race for them. Could they get to the gates before they could shut? Meg considered her options. She knew that what people were left on this side of the gate would remain here under Devolton control, so long as this band held the city. It was a large enough military group to not only hold the city, but apply pressure to the gates. First objective for her was to deal with the squad that was coming up towards the Temple District. She couldn't do it alone, so she flagged a few guards and war priests she could quickly find to meet the enemy. She adjusted her hijab and headed into battle. Kopesh in Meg's hands, she made her way toward the first of the few brave men and women from Devalton. They were just soldiers following orders, and she knew that. But this was the opening gambits of war. Crix would show them no mercy, even here, in this place, where they knew not the light of Crix. The first she would clash with was a woman who stabbed at her with a spear. Meg easily sidestepped it and spun with Khopesh, ridding the poor girl of her existence. The second spearman was just as eager, but just as sloppy. As she spun the Khopesh towards his midsection, his guts splayed out there. Her strike was not true enough to get a clean slice through the spine. She would have to reverse from him. As Meg did just that, the rest of her group was in combat with these. One of the Devalton soldiers threw his spear at Meg and pulled out a scimitar and stepped in her direction. They were on steps of the temple grounds, which had already become slippery with the spilled blood. Meg danced to dry ground and awaited the next challenger. As the young man, no, lady, with a scimitar approached and took a stance, Meg noticed that this challenger held a different rank than the other ones she had dispatched. The other lady feinted an attack, tried to goad Meg into a parry, which she did, but when the blade retracted, Meg turned the parry into a swing. This was expected from the soldier of Devalton. The soldier scored a hit on Meg, but it was just a scratch on her side. Now inside her guard, Meg dropped her hand from the Khopesh and pulled a kukri and stabbed back at the other woman, that too scoring a mark as the pair danced apart. The soldier had a smile on her face. This typically meant two things. The hit scored had hurt, and the second was she was enjoying the challenge. The soldier moved in with a wide-arcing swing with a short-bladed scimitar, which Meg parried and stabbed forward with the kukri. Without hesitation, Meg spun, and the other woman knew that it was her end before the blade landed. Meg had practiced this combination a million times, and her mark was true. By the time the skirmish was over, open warfare was happening in the city as a whole. But what surprised Meg was the number of civilians that were fighting alongside the guards. They weren't doing particularly well, but they were fighting, and that was something that Meg didn't expect to see. She expected most of these people to be running in fear, not saying that there weren't those as well, but the number that were fighting were downright impressive. One of the priests with Meg came to her side. "Ma'am, you're bleeding. Let me take care of that." Meg nodded. "No magic, though. Save that for those that are badly wounded. You'll need to save lives with that magic, not a simple surface wound." With that, Meg opened her shirt she was wearing and allowed the priest to deal with the wound. The priest did a bit of magic, but assured her it was only a touch of the grace that was provided by the will and favor of Halafaust. At the southern gate of the city, Regos had Jaina on a litter, being pulled by Holly. He was guiding a chunk of townsfolk that he managed to get under control and headed in a sane fashion. It was close to 100 or just over that number. He kept looking back and watching more and more of the city fall into the forces of Devalton. There was a steady stream of people fleeing the city, which was good. They had to get as many of these people that they could beyond the gate. The gates were about a mile outside the city proper. Just enough space for a sieging camp to be set up around fortifications. Regos took a good look at the fortifications, and they were formidable, so that was good. The aggressors were planning on the spirit of surprise to win the day. One thing concerned him, however. These gates haven't closed in a very long time. Birds had permanent nests atop the gates, and the years of sediment that gathered around the base of the gates would not make closing those gates any easy task. Looking back, Port Skara was in shambles already. The city was lost. It was a trickle of people fleeing to the cave here to the south that would be the target next. Crossing over the threshold to enter the cave, placing his feet on ancient cobblestone that led to the city of Durg, Regos set to find someone manning the gates. He found one short-bearded lad, couldn't be a day over 40, and a look of fear in his eyes as he looked out to Port Skara. While the flood of people began to pass them, Regos came up to the lad. "Hey, you there? Need you to do your duty now, young man. How do you shut these gates?" Shut the gates?" stammered the young dwarf, looking at Regos but not yet seeing him. "Right. How do you shut the gates?"
We will need to shut the gates. We have enemies that will be heading this way. If we don't shut the gates, Durg will be in a lot of trouble. Come on now, lad. I need you to snap out of it. Regos addressed the young dwarf, but realizing that the words were not sinking in, he tried a different approach. What's your name, lad? My name's Sniverin. The dwarf answered, but just so. Sniverin, show me the controls to the gate, would you? Still in a daze, but working on automatic, Sniverin showed Regos where the wheels were to shut the gate. They would need multiple people to shut those gates, with these wheels most likely, if they even worked at all. I've not ever been shown how to use them, sir. With a smile. That's all right, lad. I've got something more important for you to do for us. I need you to tell your commander that Devolton has sacked Port Skara and is planning to do the same to Durg. Can you do that? Devolton sacked Port Skara, right? That's those ships out there. Yes, that's those ships out there. They are planning to hit Durg. I need you to tell your commander about it. Can you do that for me? Yeah, but Commander's back in Durg. I'm supposed to protect these gates. The young blonde dwarf was starting to come out of his stupor. Fear still lived in his heart, though. He was thinking of duty now, not bravery. Before fear left his heart, Regos did something that he regretted before he even did it. He placed his hands on the skin of the young Sniverin and cast a fear spell on the lad. Devolton comes for Durg. They've taken Port Skara already. Now go, report to your commander, now. The spell finished with a subtle flash in Regos' eyes as the magic surged. He hated how good he was at the spell. Watching Sniverin fleeing, dropping his spear as he ran, he kept a tight hold of the shield as he ran. I'm sorry, lad. That wasn't fair. But I needed you to run. Gathering himself, he found a stout-looking group of folks. Regos knew he needed help. His scrawny arms would do nothing against the wheel, especially with all the debris that had accumulated since the last time these gates were closed. Death was marching slowly towards them, and they needed to close these gates to save as many lives as possible. He just hoped Meg would stay ahead of the main military force that was bearing down on them. Guiding the flow with a few strong men and women working on the massive wheel, they had to break it free. That's when Regos heard squeaky. But this time, he was sure it was in his head.
Regos, somebody's stealing us!
To no one in particular. Prinz might, why now? He ran into the street, away from the wheels, to see that a woman had the donkey's halter in her hand, coaxing her along. Hey, what are you doing there, ma'am? The woman, a human likely in her 70th year of age, looked back. Taking this one to Durg. That's what she needs, ain't it? Meant no offense, sir. You got your hands full. Was just trying to help, that's all. Regos halted in his tracks. Thanks for that, but I really need to keep a close eye on her. She's wounded pretty bad. You're a sweet one. It's been a long journey. What I need is more people telling Durg of the trouble we have here. Can you do that for me? Is there anyone that will listen to you in Durg? Get them to talk to you? Get them to talk to the powers that be? I can do that for you. Again, just trying to help. You got a good-looking donkey there, sir. What's her name? The old woman had stopped guiding Holly and was petting her. Holly, that's her name. Not that she answers to it. She barely answers to me when I have the lead. Regos said, somewhat embarrassed. He walked up to the woman and joined her in scratching Holly behind the jaw. The old lady smiled at Regos and touched him on the hand. You're a good lad. You'll do wonderfully in the dangers to come. Gryptus has told me a few things about you, lad. You'll do just fine. There's a second wheel over there that you'll need to get to work on. You should grab that strong lad there. His name's Rictus. Now you don't worry about Miss Jaina and your lovely frog. I'll get them to safety. The lady was holding a necklace in her hand that wasn't stroking the donkey. It was a golden human ear on a chain. Regos smiled earnestly at the woman. Rictus, he's been a friend of mine on occasion. I respect him greatly. Thank you once again. I'll grab Rictus and see if he can't give us a hand on that second gate. You speak with Rictus again, tell him I say hello. To Squeaky. All right, little one. You're gonna go with Miss Jaina here. Alert me if there's anything weird about. Protect her from me. She needs looking after, my friend. Squeaky wasn't pleased with things, but trusted Regos.
I don't like her. She smells funny.
You don't have to like her, little one. Just keep an eye out for trouble. I won't be too far away, and Jaina isn't too far from waking. Be safe, little one.
Okay, I protect her.
Squeaky said with finality. Too much of this whole thing was too final for Regos' likings. Regos ran over to Rictus and got his help on the second wheel, which was opposite the entrance to the first. With Rictus came his father and cousins. All were massive men, but men nonetheless. Rictus was so large that Regos had thought to have at least a little bit of giant blood in his veins. With both doors being worked on now, Regos went back to take a look at the site of Port Skara. There was a lot of smoke beginning to form there. Back in Port Skara, Meg was fighting her way out of the city. She had allowed herself to fall behind the advances of the main military force that was driving steadily through the city. This heavily armored marching wall of death was something that she was avoiding, but had fallen behind them. They were the spearhead, and the shaft of that spear was chaos. There was nothing to prepare these people for an organized military strike. Meg didn't know who started the fires, but there were several houses and businesses up in flames already. The smoke was starting to get thick, which helped her out. Meg had found a group of children huddled away in a building, and she was working on getting them out of the city. They were pulling up even with the spear tip now, so it was working. The small children were scared and were hiding on their parents' orders. But that was before the fire began, raining down on the city. The city was fighting for everything they had. They just didn't have enough. Pots of boiling water thrown down on the soldiers as they marched, but the resilience of these soldiers that formed the spearhead was undeterred. They were leaving the city now, heading for the gates. She had to beat them there. Why weren't those gates closing? She had planned on the gates closing to shut this army from accessing the tunnels that were the road to Durg. Once they got inside the tunnels, it would be a killing march. They were enough in number to make multiple rows of soldiers on the spearhead to make an iron wall of death and destruction. With linked hands, Meg and the girls made their break for the city gates. They would have to beat these creatures on open ground and hope that none of the archers cared about their little group. She stopped the girls now and gathered them around. She lowered her hijab so they could see her face good. All right, girls, I need you to be brave now. I need you to run up to that tunnel there and get there before me. I know you all can outrun me. This is your city. I'm not from here, and neither are they. You run, and I'll make sure you make it to the city of Durg. We will find your parents, but not right now. I need you to be little rabbits, and those out there are foxes trying to get you. Don't let them. Never let them. With that, she sent the girls into the field, up the road ahead, towards the gate of Durg. She ran behind them, making sure that they did not falter in their running. Meg had no idea what happened with the other guards and priests. They had been split up in the fighting. That led them to this point. They were at the end of the steady stream of civilians from the city of Port Skara, and likely most of the survivors of the attack here. It wouldn't be long before some of the mages that Devalton brought with them would be in range of these gates. And then the bad day would truly start. Then, to our horror, the last girl in line was snatched up by a man that was bleeding, holding her kukri. Meg had lost her the leg of a man, of this man. This man was holding a kukri to the throat of the young girl. Meg didn't even know their names. She ran forward without hesitation. If he was going to kill the girl, he was going to kill the girl. But she had to try. "It's me you want. Drop her." The man was a greasy-looking man with brown hair and a weaselly face. He looked to be a cruel man. Beyond that, she noticed something else about the man that gave her pause. His left hand was the color of red clay. She was facing a Crixian. One that was not born of stock, obviously, but had earned the title. But with that, she knew exactly how to save the girl's life, if he held to the old ways. "I, Megan Nevarro, of the blister of the great god Crix, challenge you of the right of your hand. A Crixian would never hide behind a non-combatant. Are you worthy of your hand?" Tossing the girl aside. "I'm Gando Jameson. I earned this hand in 10 battles in the arena. I need not hide behind a girl. I just wanted to ensure I got a chance to repay my wounds. I accept your challenge. May this be your first win in the arena." Meg smiled as she moved into battle this threat. As they clashed Khopesh and Kukri, the marching spearhead of soldiers were moving into view to the north of these combatants. Their plate mail armor sounded as they marched in unison, set music to this battle. Both Meg and Gando fell into the rhythm of the soldiers. Kukri was a faster weapon, but was shorter. Meg had to keep the agile fighter at range until she had an opening to strike. Meg danced as a dervish, spinning in and out of reach of her kukri. Her flowing robes were dirty, but she used the layers to her advantage. As she clashed with the kukri and reversed, sweeping at his legs with the reverse blade of the Khopesh, the man leaped over the blade, but could not clear Meg's foot as she kicked it out in a sweeping fashion to catch the man in the calves, sending him prone. She stepped on the kukri as Gando pulled a dagger from his belt. She kicked it aside. The marching soldiers were getting close now. She had to finish this. They would destroy her. As she swung the Khopesh to take off Gando's head, he kicked his feet to knock her off guard. This forced Meg to drop to her knees, taking the Khopesh down with her as a sweeping knife. Gando's efforts were not in vain, however. She missed his head, well, mostly. She ended up scalping the man, then noticed the whistling sound in the air. Spun off Gando, taking her kukri with her. As her weight was released from Gando, he rose quickly with his dagger in hand. However, this caught him directly in line with the spear that was flying to the pair. Gando was dead, but she took his left hand, putting her in danger of another spear. But she had issued the challenge. She owed it to Gando to take his hand. She didn't have to take it with her, but she had to remove it from his body. Thus, she took it anyway. She would burn it later to give rest to the original owner of the hand if they had passed on. Now she set off in a full run towards the gates of Durg. It was only mid-morning and the city of Port Skara was scarred greatly. The fires would take years to recover from. More ships were filling into the harbor. Devalton was here on conquest, not just for destruction. Callisto was surely back, at least in Meg's eyes. The gates were moving now, but were they in time? They would know within the next 30 minutes or so.
Hello, Captain Esmine Lahti. Sif sent me. We have word that there are Devalton ships in the harbor at Port Skara. We suspected your goblins would strike soon. We ain't seen no movement, but we have heard things in the cavern.
These words came from a small, yellow-skinned goblin standing at her bedside. Lahti had adjusted to the darkness, enough to manage her sleep cycle. But this was surprising to her. The little goblin was dressed much like Siv. Dressed so well that they seemed out of place. Lahti rose from the bed. Thank you for the warning. Now let me see if I can get some forces mobilizing. I have something for Siv. Surprised he hadn't come to claim it yet. Can you deliver it to him for me? The goblin bowed to Lahti.
I have orders to retrieve that as well. He is very eager to see what you have provided him from the Fedorian Civil War.
That Lahti reached behind the bed to produce a cane wrapped in paper. She smiled at the thought of the cane and how it was decorated. I feel this was match his style, and is an artifact from my own bloodline. It was a tool used in the fighting itself, and meets his style. I hope he enjoys it and uses it well. The yellow-skinned goblin took the present from Lahti and retreated from her bedchamber. Lahti then moved with earnest action to get dressed and use some of the other contacts that she had garnered over the days that she had spent here. She rushed off to the Temple District to find Migs. Migs was dressed in a dress colored in orange and red of Beldon. Lahti knew that she hated the thing, but it oddly suited her. Migs, it's time. North for sure and west probably. Already? I was just getting used to this stuff. Does this mean I'm gonna get out of this dress now? Migs wasn't ready for a response, and her modesty be damned, she was ready to strip the thing off here and now. Lahti not slowing down. Not yet. Soon, I promise. Migs, we need to hurry. Migs set off toward the industrial sector, with Lahti continuing on to the chamber of the Jarl. Along the way, she looked for another person on her list. Dandros was not at his hut, and so she continued on. There he was. Criff Voltri, a black-bearded dwarf wearing black plate mail armor that commanded a legion that were dressed just the same. Commander Criff, I've got a word. Can we talk?
Certainly. We can talk, Commander Lahti. Formal today, so you mean business. What have you heard, and do you trust the report?
Rolling with sweat from her run from the Western Gate barracks, she finally came to a stop a few feet away from Criff. I trust it greatly. I paid well for the information from a reputable secret dealer. I have word that Port Skara has been attacked by ships from Devolton. We will have trouble coming from the north, and noise has been heard in the caverns to the west as well. If you could get your legion mobilized, that would be excellent. With an eager laugh.
Even if it's a drill, it'll do the boys good to move about in their armor and do something that isn't a patrol or just a drill. I'll take you at your word, madam. You wouldn't lead us astray. I will mobilize the troops for a new drill on the official word. See if you can't convince Fury Burduli to mobilize the guard in full.
Lahti laughed. Well, that's where I'm heading next. I'm sure I'll have to wait for a bit, so I'll dry off then.
May Necropus smile upon us, and Beldon shed his light on your words. Good luck, madam. You'll need it.
With that, Criff donned his helm and began to gather his forces.
We're marching, lads. Take your weapons. We might have some duty to perform.
They were grim folk, taking up the Black Fist, knowing their duty was to die for the city of Durg. Lahti respected them. They were similar to some of the Death Speakers, especially the ones that were under the Butcher of Fedoria's control. Knowing that death was part of the duty, that you would have to be expected to perform, was something that only certain people would be willing to take on. Lahti mused as she moved to the antechamber outside the hall of the Jarl. She considered waiting. There were only a pair of people ahead of her. However, there was something about the way she was talked to by the Jarl that made her favor boldness in rushing in. With a sadistic smile on her face, she decided to burst right in and show the urgency. As she burst in, she found a man dressed in the purple and black formal garb of the people of Devolton, was speaking with Fury Burduli. And she seemed very interested in the conversation, it seemed. As she looked about, she also saw 2 members of the Honor Guard flying the crest of Devolton as well. Lower Corner, Dragoons. You were chosen. Each of you were handpicked for your military might and prowess. Each of you were given the flaming dragon head as a symbol of your favor to the people of Devolton. You are the mighty. You are the loyal. You are those that reflect upon the Dragoon Herald, Kheasurid, the Sentinel of Destruction. Be proud. Induction ceremony speech, conclusion. The mightiest soldiers that Devolton can bring to bear upon an enemy, the Dragoons, are Kheasurid's chosen. These are all soldiers that exemplified discipline and skill. They each work as an elite soldier and are a death sentence for nearly any that clash blades with them. There are several divisions of Dragoons. All of them should be feared for their military might. The Dragon Riders are elite members stemming from the Beast Riders. They form bonds with dragons that choose to go into battle with these warriors. And the Beast Riders themselves are elite cavalry soldiers that ride beasts into battle, be it horses or something more fearsome. Many times the beasts are local beasts that the Keeper of the Beast put under their control. Then you have the soldiers that typically form the vanguard of the Dragoons. The ones most commonly depicted when discussing Dragoons, simply called Kheasurid's Fist, or the Fist for short. The Fist is typically heavily armored soldiers that march into battle with tower shields and battle axes or swords and the like. When Kheasurid himself joins the fray, he typically shoulders up with the Fist. The Fist is the first forces that land in an engagement. Sometimes the support of a Dragon Rider will give them a spot to start, but they are the ones that knock on the closed doors first. Behind the Fist are elite archers and spearmen called appropriately as the Spear of Kheasurid, or the Spear. The spearmen protect the archers as the archers continue to clear the way for the Fist to advance. The spearmen are armed with spears, of course, then lighter skirmish weapons. When the spear runs out of ammunition, they are then deployed as skirmishers to deal with outlying targets and threats. These are typically objective takers. If the gates need to be captured, the spear deals with it. If a tower needs to be taken down, it's the spear that deals with it. No matter the division, the colors are the same. Red with black trim. Champions of the division will have a gold emblem upon their armor that they wear. Aside from that small marker, there are no differences between the soldiers. The rank structure is also fairly flat, with the structure only having a few ranks. Dragoon, Dragoon Leader, Dragoon Champion, and the Dragoon Herald. Well, travelers, I'm leaving you in quite the quandary, aren't I? So many questions and loose threads. Who is this representative from Devolton, and what are they doing in Durg? Does Meg make it back before the gates closed, or do the gates click closed in time before the Devolton Vanguard reaches them? Even the question of why does Meg know so much about the Crixians? Well, we'll find out this and more as we approach the end of the second arc of the Calmbringer cycle. I want to thank Adrian Von Ziegler for the privilege to use his music to make the story all that much better. For this month's Traveler, I will be making grilled giant salmon fillets. This dish is commonly served at many of the ports along the Iceflow Canal. You can find the recipes of Calidria up on patreon.com. With that said, I want to thank you for listening and if you wish to support the podcast, a rating where you find the podcast would mean a lot, or a simple thumbs up in the YouTube space, or subscribe if you really like it. If you want to support a bit more and get the recipes of Kheasurid in your kitchen, as well as additional lore content, please support me over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/goldenimpn. Signing up will give you access to our Discord server. I hope to continue to build a great community over there, but I can only do that with you. So won't you join us and join the conversation? And if you want to follow me outside the podcast space, you can find me on Blue Sky at Empress Scald. I am Joe Craig, the Empress Scald. Thank you for listening, and remember, you've been scalded.